it goes back looking like a plant again. One of those things that you have to jump in the water at night to see. And of course, you've got the sea stars as well. Many interesting things about sea stars. Chop off their leg, they'll grow a whole new sea star. Also, it doesn't have, its stomach actually extrudes, so it'll put its stomach over its food, digest it, then bring its stomach back into its body. Plenty of other things as well. There's also, did you know sea stars have eyes? Sea stars have an eye on each end, but not like you and me, simple eyes. They can detect light and dark and so forth. And the most common one you'll get in Australasia waters is this one called the Leica or electric blue sea star. Now, has anybody ever heard of the crown of thorns starfish? That did make the news around the world pretty much. We had an outbreak of them in far north Queensland back in the 90s. And what they do is they're a sea star that eats the coral reef. And they'll start off as little tackers. They'll eat the whole reef. And then they'll march along the sand to the next reef, they'll turn up small again, and then they'll consume the whole reef and end up big again. And they continue doing that, and they nearly wiped out a large portion of the Great Barrier Reef in the 1990s. And we didn't know why they were doing this, and after about 5 years of research, we deduced that it was actually, once again, our fault. And this creature produces about 66 million eggs. The mortality rate during the larval stage, the very first stage, is 99.9999 whatever. When you introduce a little bit more nutrients into the water from, say, farming, fertilizer runoff, if you effluent being pumped out, all those sort of nasty things we used to do back in the 80s and 90s, basically you make that mortality rate to 99.9. And so instead of having 60 ones making it to the small stage, or the juvenile stage, you then have 6,000. And so we had a massive outbreak. We actually removed these all individually from the Great Barrier Reef. We had massive teams of people out there just picking them up and collecting them. That's the only way we actually stopped them from pretty much eating the whole Great Barrier Reef. And there's just a close-up of them basically sucking the coral polyp straight out of the coral and turning it nice and white. One of the only predators of the crown of thorns starfish is the giant triton mollusk. This big guy here, and of course, very famous shell. You might have seen that shell before. Yeah. It's because it's such a pretty shell and such a renowned shell, they've all been removed, and there's not many of them left, and therefore there's not many predators of the crown of thorns. So that's also a bit of an issue as well. Now, we couldn't be talking about marine creatures without including the good old crocodile. Of course, very much a great Australian creature. I just want to throw a few facts your way. Their life cycle, I don't have enough time to go into right now in their sexual reproduction, but it is quite astounding as well. Maximum length in Australia, 8.6 metres. That's very debatable. They say up to 11.9 is the biggest one that was ever recorded. But once again, the largest specimen that was intact and was frozen was 8.6 metres in length. Maximum weight of 1,300 kilograms. Huge, huge animal. Lifespan of been 130 years, although they average under 100, about 90 or 80. Maximum land speed of 17 kilometres per hour. You can outrun a crocodile any day of the week, okay? I've outrun them plenty of times. Just make sure you don't turn around in the first 50 metres, okay? Just run that first 50 metres, and then you'll turn around and you'll find he stopped at 2. But you don't want to just check for the first 50 metres. Their diet is fish, birds, mammals, and occasionally smaller crocodiles. They're not big on cannibalism. But actually, the larger they get, now these are saltwater crocodiles, Crocodilius porosus is the Latin name. Once they get to about 8.6 metres, they actually live exclusively in fresh water because they can no longer get enough food in the salt water. There's not enough fish. They can't consume enough fish to survive. So what they do is they swim all the way up the river to a fresh watering hole, and they'll sit there and they will just eat a cow every 3 to 4 months. And that's generally how the big ones live. So to say that you're in a freshwater creek and you're safe from a saltwater crocodile is actually quite a big fallacy. The only way you'll be safe swimming in freshwater creeks in the northern part of Australia is if there's a waterfall in front of you. If there's a waterfall, crocodiles can't climb up waterfalls, so therefore you're pretty safe. Now, the most amazing fact I find about crocodiles is their bite force capabilities. It is astounding, and I've yet to find a creature which actually beats it? And please, if you do know, come and tell me, because I really want to find out. I've been looking all over the place. Their bite force is 340 atmospheres. Or if you want to convert it to PSI, times it by 14.6. That's incredible. To put it into comparison, great white shark, only 27, Rottweiler, 23. It can pretty much bite through concrete. It's a pretty amazing bite force. But you can hold it shut, its mouth shut, with 2 fingers. All that force is in closing. It has no ability to open its mouth. And that's why you can get a piece of sticky tape, wrap it around its mouth, and it can't open its mouth anymore. Another very interesting creature, which I'm sure none of you have even heard of, is this one. And I will just check. Has anybody ever seen this shell before? No? It's called a geographic cone shell, but in particular we're talking about cone shells here. They are found all around the world, but this particular one, the geographic cone shell, is found, you'll be glad to know, only from sort of Brisbane and the other side of Australia, about the same level, and north, not found south, thank God. Because this is the most dangerous creature in the world. This will kill you in about 20 minutes flat, and you won't even feel it. What it has is got this proboscis, this little thing that comes out. Now this shell also is only about 2 to 3 inches in size. Very, very pretty. And this little proboscis fires a poisonous dart out and can hit you. Now, if you are a creature that's only 2 inches in size, why would you develop a poison that can kill a human being? Doesn't that seem like a bit of a, going a bit overboard? And it's all about how fast they are. This creature eats fish, and eats small little fish, and basically if it didn't have such a strong toxin, it would have a difficult time eating its prey, basically because it's so slow. So the fish swims along. Here's the cone shell, and it fires the dart. And say if if the poison was any weaker, that fish could swim maybe 1 meter and then die. Then, of course, you're a cone shell. You can understand what I'm getting at. You wouldn't get there. Something else would get your food. So it's developed a poison that when that dart hits the fish instantly drops to the ground, and then it consumes it. And that's why the poison, of course, can affect something much larger. Now, I'll tell you just a quick story that happened back in the 80s in Australia, which I think sums up this creature in a nutshell. These 2 guys were walking down the beach, and they found somebody on the beach early in the morning, and he was face down in the sand. So they thought, ooh, this might be a bit wrong. So they went and they sort of, are you all right, mate? Are you all right? Didn't get any response. They were both lifeguards. So they actually basically started giving mouth-to-mouth and CPR, and they called an ambulance, and they were giving him mouth-to-mouth CPR for about 15 minutes, and then they actually looked at each other and went, oh, you know what? He's dead. And they gave up. The ambulance arrived, thank God, about 3 minutes later. The ambulance turned up, immediately saw that he had all these shells around him. They immediately knew that it was the cone shell. They continued CPR mouth-to-mouth. They took him back to a hospital. They put him on a heart and lung machine, and about 4 to 5 hours later, he woke up. Perfectly fine. Not a problem. His liver had worked the poison through his system. No ill effects whatsoever. Because the CPR and the mouth-to-mouth was continued, of course, no problems with the brain or anything like that. So he woke up, and the first thing he said was, I want to see the people who rescued me. Quite a common request. So the 2 guys came in, and they were like, we're going to get a reward. It's